Hey, what's up everyone, Ollie here. So I've been using the Magic Keyboard for the last few days now. I want to give you my opinion of it. So I've got the 11-inch version here. This costs $299. They do also do the 12.9-inch version, which costs $349. When Apple announced it, and they also said that it's going to be supporting the 2018 iPad Pro, which is the one I've got here, I thought, hey, I'd buy it, see what it's like. And yeah, so far my experience has been pretty good. Not perfect, but it's been good. So when unboxing it, you don't actually get anything else in the box other than the case itself. You don't even get a power cable because the case and the keyboard is actually powered through the iPad. I was actually surprised at how heavy it was. I wasn't expecting it to have such a weight to it. And I know the 12.9-inch version is even heavier. 12.9-inch version is heavier than the iPad itself. But one of the reasons it's so heavy is because, of course, it's really well built. It has a really nice sort of soft touch plastic feel to it. And it is incredibly solid. I was actually really impressed by how solid it felt. You know, if I open it up, the keyboard itself basically has no flex whatsoever. If you really wanted to break this thing, you would have to put in quite a bit of force. So it's good to know, you know, if you just throw it in a backpack or whatever else, don't have to worry about it. It will protect the keyboard itself and your iPad. When it comes to putting the iPad on the case itself, it's just done via magnets. Very simple, latches really well into place, very satisfying sort of latch as well, and it can easily come off as well. But the sort of magnet strength is almost perfect, I think, because if I put the iPad on and I shake it, it's not going to fall off, it's not going to come off, it stays very well on there. There's no cables either, it just communicates via the 3 pins on the back of the iPad and on the case. So yeah, no cables you have to mess with or anything like that. Very simple, very elegant solution. It's a very Apple-like solution. One issue that I have with the case when it's closed is that when you're not looking at the case and you're trying to open it, sometimes I've opened the case and unlatched the iPad at the same time, which can be quite dangerous because if you're opening it, say, at standing height, and you open the case with the iPad in it and then you unlatch the iPad will just slip out. And you can imagine if you drop it on concrete floor or anything like that, you're going to smash your iPad. So that's something to be wary of, and something which I'm surprised Apple haven't properly thought of. I think the best way to combat that would be to have a groove like the MacBook has. Some sort of groove or something to give you a sort of indication, a physical indication, so that you can feel it and make sure that you're opening it the right way. And when it comes to opening it, it's not an elegant solution. It requires quite a bit of force and it requires 2 hands. You can't do it with 1 hand like you can with a MacBook. But once it is open, it opens up into this position. The hinge itself is very solid. It feels great, very smooth. And it sort of just opens up and locks into position. And then once you've got it there, you actually angle the iPad and you're ready to go. But as you can see, the sort of angle position is very limited from there to there. That's all you can do. You can't go any further than that. Now, I can see this being a big issue for people who use the Apple Pencil, you know, a product which Apple market a hell of a lot with the iPad Pro. If you're using the Apple Pencil, you have to use the iPad at this angle, when I don't think that feels natural whatsoever. I think a better solution would have been that the case goes back even further and that the iPad comes down to here. The bottom of the iPad comes down to here. Now that would have been a much better solution to using the iPad with the Apple Pencil, but then I can understand that it would take away some of the rigidity from the case itself and wouldn't give you such a solid feeling sort of typing experience that it does currently. Also, there's no way to actually have the iPad flat. So if you want to have the iPad flat, you have to take it out of the case, shut the case, and then maybe put it on top. That's the only solution I can think of when it comes to using the iPad flat. So if you're someone who does use the Apple Pencil a lot and writes sketches, things like that, then your only solution is this, or just sticking with a normal case that lets you make your iPad go flat. I do really like how there's a USB-C port in the case itself. So to charge your iPad, you can just put the USB-C cable in there and it will charge the iPad through the case, which is fantastic. Not having to use 2 different cables to power the case, to power the iPad. And it's also a much cleaner solution because if you charge the iPad, the charging port is here. If you charge the iPad whilst the case is open, the cable's sort of dangling. But with the cable going into here, it's sitting flat against the desk, which I think looks much better too, and is going to sort of increase the longevity of your cables as well. When it comes to the actual keyboard experience, I think it's fantastic. It is actually a really good keyboard. If you've used the Magic Keyboard on an iMac, on a MacBook, especially the new MacBooks, not the ones before it where they had so many issues, but the actual proper scissor switches that they currently have, it's fantastic. It works so well and it's such a satisfying typing experience. I really like it. I've always liked Magic Keyboards. I've always liked the experience that they give me when it comes to typing. So, if you've used them before, you will find this very familiar, very satisfying keyboard to use. I also really like how all the keys are black and the case is black. I think it gives it a nice sort of elegant, classy solution, especially with the iPad screen being black too. One issue that I do have with the keyboard is that there's no escape key and there's no function row keys. So, the escape key especially, I'm honestly surprised that they haven't included it. They could have just included a very thin line of buttons like Microsoft do on the Surface laptop, Surface Pro, whatever it is. I'm surprised Apple just haven't done that. They could easily do that. I don't see why it's an issue of doing that. I'm sure they have their own reasons, but I just think a function row keys would have been so much more useful, especially when you're typing or you're doing something and you want to change the volume, you want to change tracks, you want to change the brightness of the screen or the keyboard or whatever else that you want to do. Having that function row keys was very useful for that sort of stuff. To do that now, you have to take your hand away from the keyboard and use the trackpad or use the actual touchscreen on the iPad to change things around, which just isn't a smooth and elegant sort of solution. Also, another thing I noticed with specifically the 11-inch version is to fit the keyboard in the case, they've actually had to narrow down some of the keys. So if you're someone who has big fingers, fat fingers, I could see this being an issue. It's not too much of an issue for me. I don't mind it. I don't mind the narrow keys, but it's something to keep in mind. A neat little tip that I've seen going around is that you can hold down the command key in any app and it will show you the keyboard shortcuts for that app. Very useful. I've learned so many more keyboard shortcuts that way. When it comes to the trackpad, very satisfying to use, very smooth. It feels just like a Mac trackpad. If you've used them before, you know exactly what it's like. And the clicking as well is very satisfying. It's a proper click as well, not a forced touch click. And yeah, it's fantastic. The cursor as well works so much better than I expected. I'll be honest, when I first saw the cursor, I was very skeptical. I was just thinking, I can't see this working very well. But after using it and using it with a trackpad, it works really well. The cursor itself isn't your standard sort of cursor that you get with a PC or a Mac where you have a pointer. The iPad cursor is a small translucent sort of black circle, very small. You can change the size of it if you wish in the settings, but yeah, it's a small little circle that you sort of navigate around like a normal cursor as you would. But it also morphs to buttons and icons, giving you indication that you're hovering over a button or an icon that's ready to be clicked. The only issue is not all apps support it. So a lot of developers haven't actually updated their apps yet to support the cursor properly. The cursor will work. It will work over some of the buttons and some of the icons that they have in their apps. But I found because it doesn't morph to the button or the icon, you don't actually know if you're properly hovering over it, and you don't know whether clicking will actually do what you want it to do. So that is an issue there, and I think that's just something that is going to take time, and app developers just need to update their apps for cursor support, because I can see that being a big requirement for a lot of iPad users. So when it really comes down to it, it does actually feel like a mini MacBook. It feels like an iPhone and a MacBook had a baby and they created this. That's really the best way to put it. The experience is good. It's not perfect by any means, as I've gone through some of the sort of drawbacks with it. It's not perfect, but this is the best solution right now. I don't think there is anything else out there that works as well as this does. Apple hopefully will keep improving it, because I would really like a case that can fold flat, especially, when you're using an Apple Pencil. I think that would be great. I've also really enjoyed the experience of it. I use it a lot when I'm sitting in front of the TV. When I'm sitting in front of the TV, I am taking notes, I'm typing documents, browsing the web, using the keyboard and the trackpad for that sort of stuff. It's just a great experience. It works really well. It works really well for my situation anyway, because when it comes to doing heavy work, heavy design work, heavy video editing, photo editing, things like that, I'm still always going to go back to my iMac. My iMac is more powerful. I have the bigger screen. I'm naturally going to get done work like that on my iMac. But when it comes to typing documents, browsing the web, watching videos, playing games, I'm going to use my iPad. It's a much more portable device that I can use anywhere I want. And being able to use it in front of the TV is where I use it most, and I really like it. However, if it really came down to it and I had to choose between a MacBook or an iPad Pro and a Magic Keyboard, if I could only choose one, I would choose the MacBook. The MacBook costs pretty much the same. Actually, I think a MacBook Air costs $100 less actually for this sort of setup. If you want to get the 12.9-inch version, you're looking at MacBook Pro territory. So you can imagine if you're spending that sort of money, you might just be better off spending the money on a MacBook Pro if you had to choose between them, because a MacBook is going to be more useful than an iPad and a Magic Keyboard put together. But I have the luxury of being able to have both. I have the iMac and I have my iPad and a Magic Keyboard, and it works for me, it works well for me. But if you had to choose one, I think I would still choose the MacBook Pro. So yeah, that's it for this video. Let me know what you would choose, whether you would choose a MacBook or an iPad Pro and a Magic Keyboard. Let me know if you've picked up a Magic Keyboard and why you like it, or maybe you don't like it, maybe you're going to return it. I want to know your experience, I want to know why maybe you would even choose an iPad and a Magic Keyboard over a MacBook Pro. So yeah, just let me know your opinions down in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for more. Oh, quick one as well. What do you guys think of this new setup? My new sort of A-roll setup. So this will be my main sort of place now to make videos, because before I was making videos down in my living room downstairs. Now having to set it up all the time just was a bit of a faff, so I wanted a proper studio where I can have the camera always set up, I can have my lighting always set up, and it just looks a bit more consistent. I'll do a more in-depth video because I'm sure you guys will be interested in seeing what's behind the camera and this sort of shelving unit and the accessories that I've chosen for the shelving unit. I also need to put some prints up. I'm going to get some of my own photography and put it up in the wall. But yeah, watch out for that video. And if you guys don't already know, I actually have a Patreon set up. So, you know, if you're interested in seeing more behind the scenes and seeing some written blog posts from me, check out my Patreon. I'm updating it pretty much every week, every other week, putting wallpapers and stuff on there as well. So make sure to check that out.